What if I told you that there is a Tomb Raider game, but instead of playing as Lara Croft running through the jungle or some ancient ruins somewhere, instead you play as a dominatrix running through a torture dungeon? That game totally exists. And it's called Deathtrap Dungeon, and it's on the PlayStation 1. So let me just say this first. I tried playing this on the PS3, which is supposed to be backwards compatible, and it wouldn't let me select which character I wanted to use, and there also was no sound. So this game doesn't really work on the PlayStation 3. You have to play it on a PlayStation 1 or a PlayStation 2, and I'm playing it on the PlayStation 2 here. The evil Baron has concocted this perilous dungeon below his castle, and he's invited adventurers from all over the land to come, for the challenge. And if you survive, you get incredible wealth, but if you fail, the evil Baron gets your soul. So that's the whole premise. You can choose between a male or a female character, and like always, I picked the female character because if I'm going to be staring at something for hours, I'd rather it be a female. So I mentioned this game is like Tomb Raider. The reason I said that is because it's made by Eidos, the same company that made Tomb Raider. It plays just like Tomb Raider, and it looks just like Tomb Raider, in its graphical style. It has the tank controls, just like the original Tomb Raider, which makes sense, They were made by the same company. And it's a dungeon crawler with like a really strong emphasis on solving these puzzles. And this game is extremely unforgiving. And it's pretty cheap at times too. I mean, a lot of the traps, just like a trap is supposed to be, you don't know it's there and you run into them constantly and they kill you. And the save points come like few and far between, and it can be a little hard to get through a challenge to get to the next save point. And health potions and things like that are, they're rare. But that's kind of the point, right? It's supposed to be this really challenging dungeon to give you all your wildest dreams. The game opens with this like really campy but totally awesome cinematic cutscene that shows what it's like being inside the dungeon if you're basically a bumbling idiot. And I enjoyed that a lot. And that really set up the game and got my expectations really high. And like I said, I jumped into the game and I loved the atmosphere. I loved the premise of the game. And the first few hours I played of the game, I was having a really good time. But, the tank controls of this are pretty clunky. As you would expect, tank controls usually are pretty clunky, but this one felt like a little bit towards that higher end of clunkiness. They were more clunky than I was used to. And the camera in this is absolutely terrible, and it really messes you up, as it tends to kind of like point in the opposite direction from where you actually want it to go. A lot of time you're like facing into the camera, running towards the screen, like Crash Bandicoot style, which is frustrating when there's traps all in front of you and enemies spawning out of nowhere and things like that. You constantly just run into them when you're not expecting to, and it can, end your run in no time whatsoever. The enemies in the traps zone in from basically nowhere with no clues or anything that they're going to be coming up. And that can get a little frustrating when you're like 85% of the way through a level and you're running towards the exit, and then you're about to pull a switch and like 5 Minotaurs just teleport in directly behind you and whack you before you can turn around and block or anything. You really need to know they're going to be there, and that's the crux of the game. Like, they want you to play through it over and over and over and over and over and over and memorize where everything's going to be, and slowly like develop your knowledge of the game to the point where you have a flawless memory of every trap and every enemy in the dungeon and how to get through every obstacle and everything they throw at you. And really the only way to get good at this is just through trial and error, which I hate. Like, it's not relying on my skills as a gamer. It's relying on me like trading my time for something that's frustrating to be able to make progress in the game. This game really reminds me of like Super Meat Boy, where you have these really, really hard stages that you have to play over and over and over again to learn to master. Except like in Super Meat Boy, when you die, you lose like the last 30 seconds. In this game, when you die, you lose like the last 30 minutes. And it can really add up. I think that the premise and the idea of this game were really cool, but the execution of it just let me down, right? I wanted to really love this game, and I did for the first few hours, but then I just got absolutely annihilated by the game over and over and over again. And if you look online, people say things like, man, this game was super unfair, and I hate this game, and it's no fun, and then other people are like, you can knock this game out in an afternoon. Maybe if you know exactly what to do, but I did not have a good time with it towards the end, and I actually gave up on it. I just quit it. I got too frustrated and I wasn't having fun anymore. Tank controls are fine on slower based games. But on games where there's like time limits and a bunch of like precision platforming and things like that, you need tighter controls, and this game just doesn't have it. So how was Deathtrap Dungeon? I would say it was pretty mediocre. I'd give it a 5 out of 10. I loved things about it, I hated things about it, so it kind of ended up in the middle, which is where no game ever needs to be, on the fence. If this one looks good to you, maybe give it a shot. It's really cheap. If what I've said dissuaded you from playing it, then I've done my job as well.